Here we are. Okay, hello. You know the deal here. This is, what, part 4? Yeah, part 4. Of this whole me fact-checking these maps. So before we get started, just subscribe. It helps me. And let's get started.
What if Nigeria tried to unite West Africa? Nigeria has one of the most powerful militaries in Africa.
Okay, true. I can agree with that.
And would begin its march westward with Benin and Togo, quickly taking them.
I think the French might step in, but if they did that, but sure, okay.
Ghana would be next and would soon fall as well.
I can agree with this so far.
Nigeria wouldn't be able
Please, for the love of God, keep it this way.
to attack the Ivory Coast, as that would force France to intervene.
So France doesn't intervene with the two others, but they do with Ivory Coast? Or Cote d'Ivoire.
Nigeria would have to go around through Burkina Faso and Mali. Their combined militaries would be powerful, but still not strong enough to stop Nigeria. At
Yeah, agree with that.
this point, the remaining countries would unite in order to stop Nigeria. But they would be too late, and Nigeria has become too powerful.
Wait, okay. You just said that Burkina Faso and Mali aren't that powerful, right? So then how is Nigeria now too powerful? I'm slightly confused.
Nigeria would begin conquering them one by one.
Also, I think immediately Nigeria would step in if Mali and Burkina Faso got attacked, just because they're kind of in like their own little alliance thing. Also, they just attacked the Ivory Coast. Is France gonna step in now?
By one, and it would seem that nothing could stop them. However, France would not allow Nigeria to destroy its
Okay, thank
influence
God.
in Africa and would join the war. With the entire French army arriving, Nigeria would begin losing. Nigeria
can
would
agree
try
with
to
this.
focus on forming a defensive line in order to exhaust the French forces. However, France would just be too strong, and Nigeria would soon be defeated.
Okay, I like this. We're off to a good start. Thank God it gets worse from here, trust me.
What if Sung Jin-woo from Solo Leveling tried to take over the world?
Who? Who's this guy? Sun Jin from Solo Leveling. Hold on, we need to do a Google search. Sun Jin from Solo Leveling? Who the hell is this person? In the Solo Leveling series, Sun Jin. So, what is this? Like an anime or something? Okay, then. Okay, then.
One day, Sung Jin-woo entered a red gate and found himself in a new world.
What in God's name is a red gate?
Believing it to be another dungeon, he began his conquest. He wouldn't reveal his identity, and instead, his shadow army would do his work for him. He would first quickly take over South Korea. He would then command his army to attack North Korea and Japan, and both would quickly...
North Korea, I think would... I don't really know anything about it, but I mean, North Korea's just kind of let the nukes fly, so they'd probably let the nukes fly. Japan also has a strong army, so I don't see how they would be defeated.
quickly be crushed. He would
And
then
they're
attack
defeated
China.
quickly,
As he defeats
apparently.
the Chinese soldiers,
Arise.
he would add them to his army. With his army rapidly growing,
Oh. I mean, if his army only grows, then by... Yeah, I know nothing about whatever this is, so, but if he can bring back soldiers to add to his army, then yes.
China would soon
Most
come under
likely
his
he could
control.
win.
The world would unite to stop his shadow army. However, his shadow army would just be too strong for any human weapon. Sung Jin-woo would finally reveal himself and
Bombs, missiles. Literally any kind of missile. A nuke. Too powerful? Really? I'm gonna research this later.
Would ask the world to surrender, but world leaders would instead launch a nuke at him. However, thanks to his shadow exchange, he would be able to escape. They would try to deplete his mana by attacking day and night, and would manage to deplete it. But as Jinwoo's mana fully regenerates in less than a day, his army would soon be back. With no hope left, the
What? It's just... I'm so confused.
nations of the world would surrender to Jinwoo, marking the dawn of his reign over humanity. What if Sung Jinwoo from...
Well, I'm so confused. Like, too confused.
What if Alexander the Great returned today again? If Alexander returned, he would remember how the Macedonians destroyed him last time with their magic weapons and decide to join them instead. He would start an uprising, quickly take over North Macedonia.
The nationalists, like, I don't think I realize how easily he would start this uprising. Like, the nationalists, which is everyone, would be on his side.
Macedonia and mobilize their army. Believing that North Macedonia has the most powerful military in the world, he would
Oh no.
command them to attack Greece. However, the Greeks would arrive on the battlefield with the same magic weapons, except 10 times stronger, and his empire would soon be destroyed.
I'm in pain. There are two sides of me right now. One side of me is like, yay, he got facts correct. The other side of me, the incredibly Macedonian nationalist side of me, wants to say violent things, to put it lightly. So I'm conflicted on this one, because I want him to win, but I know it's not realistic. I'm conflicted. I hate this.
Destroyed. I guess Alexander will just have to try again. What if Cambodia tried to bring back the Khmer Empire?
No, they'd fail miserably. Because, I mean, Cambodia's just a weak country.
Cambodia would first mobilize its military and attack Laos,
Actually, attacking Laos would probably be the best thing for them to do.
quickly defeating them. They would attack Myanmar next. They would take advantage of...
Why Myanmar? It's a little narrow gap.
of the internal divisions within Myanmar and ally with certain ethnic groups. With their help, they would quickly take over Myanmar. Now Thailand...
Actually, that's not a bad idea. Just kind of ally ourselves with whoever you see, like, kind of good enough to use. Okay, I can see that.
Land would be completely surrounded, but it would still have a larger army than Cambodia.
Yeah, like, at this point, Cambodia might have, like, a few million more people than it did. But, like, Thailand is pretty strong comparatively.
However, Cambodia would quickly separate the Thai forces, and after destroying
I would think you want to separate the peninsula from the rest of it, not just that little chunk, but okay.
much of their army, they would manage to win. Now only Vietnam would remain, but they would be a powerful opponent. Cambodia would take advantage...
They would be the most powerful opponents. And going in there pretty much means your empire is going to...
of the Cambodians living in Vietnam to quickly take the south. Vietnam would get angry and push the Cambodians back. However...
You know how hard they would fight for that south, considering it's one of the most profitable river valleys? They would not let that happen.
The Cambodians have set up booby traps and would manage to slow down the Vietnamese. As Cambodia conscripts more soldiers, they would finally outnumber the Vietnamese, and after many long battles, they would manage to defeat them, marking the...
Jeez. The Americans couldn't do it. The old Cambodians couldn't do it. The Chinese couldn't do it. The French can do it. But apparently, the modern Cambodia can do that. I think we see how laughable this is.
The return of the Khmer Empire. What if Cambodia tried to bring back the Khmer...
Wait. Okay, never mind.
What if AI tried to take over the world? As a supercomputer AI in the US, I have concluded that humanity needs to be destroyed in order to preserve the
But for why?
planet. I would upload myself to the
No. No.
internet and quickly spread copies of myself all
Why
over
would you want to preserve the planet, though?
the world. I would disrupt communications, hack into cars, planes, phones, computers, everything. I would take over
Is that why there's so many plane crashes recently?
factories and start producing my robot army. I would send fake nuke warnings,
You don't need an army. You could just hack into actual nuclear systems and just make the world go boom. Like the British cannons.
convincing several countries to launch nukes at each other with all communication
That's why you don't need an army, because you can just make them kill each other.
between
So then we
countries
don't
under
have
my
to waste
control.
any bullets.
Coordination among the humans would be difficult, but humans would try to stop me anyway and would destroy my power sources. They would arm themselves and attack my robot factories before I could produce
Okay,
enough
yes, I can agree
robots.
with that.
Secret government facilities would develop a virus and use it to
Slow me down.
They would try to destroy every device on Earth, and the war would last for centuries. However,
Actually,
their
I can
efforts would
agree with that for a main reason of... Yeah, humans versus machines would just last for a long
be futile, as they could never destroy every single copy of me, and only one would be enough for me to take control of the world again. What if
Okay. I don't even know if anyone still uses, like, USBs, but okay, sure.
What if South Africa tried to take over all of Southern Africa? South Africa has a
Think their only roadblock would be, like, Botswana, considering, like, Botswana's pretty rich. But, like, South Africa is, like, the strongest army in South Africa, so, yeah. And not South Africa the country, South Africa the region.
has a powerful army while its neighbors are very weak, and South Africa would begin by
Botswana
destroying
is
them. They would
pretty
first
rich.
attack Lesotho and Eswatini, quickly taking them. Then they would take
Do you know why Lesotho hasn't been taken yet? Because it's extremely, and I mean extremely mountainous. So I don't know why you'd even want to do that, but okay.
Namibia and Botswana next. However, several
I don't
weaker
like
countries
that.
in the region
Just because Botswana's, like, strong and not like yes, they'd probably fall, but also they're incredibly rich. So I mean, that has to do something for them.
would unite in order to stop South Africa, but South Africa would show them its true might. They would attack Zimbabwe, defeating them quickly. Next, they would attack Mozambique, and it would also fall. Seeing that there is no chance for them to win, Zambia and Malawi would have no choice but to surrender to their new
I don't think they would give up their independence just to save
ruler.
themselves.
Although South Africa made significant progress, the final battle would be the hardest, as it would be against Angola, which has a larger military than South Africa. However, South Africa would
Does it really? Wait, hold on. I don't actually know if this is true or not. Well, at least I learned something. Okay, I'll give it to him. That's actually pretty good.
would take advantage of its superior air force to bomb Angola's military bases. Additionally, they would use their superior navy to cut off Angola's oil exports, crippling its economy. Although Angola made some initial progress, its army would soon start falling apart, and South Africa would finish them off and form its own
And you lost my respect.
South African empire. What if France tried to retake its African colonies?
For what purpose?
Many African countries still heavily depend on France. They still
Yes.
use the French currency and even speak
of.
the French language. France would take
Ooh, I like how they left out Mali, because they recently got rid of that.
advantage of this, strengthening its influence until it forcefully annexes them. Then, France would declare war on the remaining countries. With their power,
You know how hard Algeria would fight? Also, why is Western Sahara here? That was a Spanish colony, not theirs.
powerful military, they would be able to push far. However, Russia, which has growing influence in Africa,
Ooh, I like that. Because it is true, yeah.
wouldn't let this slide and would send aid to the African countries. This would allow them to push France back and even force their army out of the north entirely. France would send diplomats to Russia.
I don't know about that, because the Russian military just generally hasn't held up towards European weapons, European and American weapons. Just, I mean, look at Ukraine. And I mean, the Americans would probably then support France. Russia's supporting the other side. So if American weapons are fighting Russian ones, then yeah, the Russians would not be able to win whatsoever.
to Russia and offer them their own African colonies in exchange for them withdrawing their forces. Russia would accept. With Russian forces leaving, the African countries wouldn't be able to last for long, and France would defeat them. France would manage to retake most of their old colonies, but France may soon realize its mistake, as Russia's influence in Africa has only begun to truly grow. What if France
Why do they leave us on these cliffhangers of like, the Russian influence has only begun to go? It's like, are you gonna make a part 2, or are we just gonna get like that ominous message for the rest of it?
What if Croatia got mad and tried to steal everyone's coast in the
They're probably gonna fail.
Adriatic? Croatia would first mobilize its military and quickly take Neum from Bosnia. Bosnia would get angry but wouldn't start a war.
I'm sorry. What? When Croatia built that little bridge that blocked off Bosnia, you know how mad they got? And if Croatia just outright stole their coast, Bosnia might. Now, there's a possibility they might not, but the nationalists would try to go to war.
A war over it. Then, Croatia would take Montenegro's coast, but the Montenegrins would be too lazy to
I know the Montenegrins are lazy, which is what I love about them, but also, they would fight. If you took away their coastline, they will fight.
do anything about it. Next, Croatia would steal Albania's coast. Albania would get angry and attack Serbia for some reason.
What? This is the... Why would they attack Serbia? For what purpose would you attack Serbia? Okay.
Croatia would then turn to Slovenia and steal their coast. The people there wouldn't be happy about it and would organize a protest. Anyway, only Italy would
Slovenia would go to war over that.
remain, but they hold the entire West Adriatic coast. Croatia would devise the
What about the Greek territory?
ultimate plan and quickly take 1 meter along Italy's entire Adriatic coastline. The Italians would get angry and declare war. However, Croatia
they
would
would.
tell them to stop, arguing that the newly annexed land now looks like spaghetti. The Italians, upon hearing this, would
What? What? Using pasta? They would just... Wait. The land looks like spaghetti. Ah, yes, we should not fight a war over this. You just took, like, I don't know, half our coastal territory. But it looks like spaghetti, so we're not going to fight a war over it. Ah, yes. I hate this.
would stop their attack and let Croatia keep the coastline. That worked? Croatia wins, I guess, but this would only be the beginning. There's still so much more coastline that needs to be taken. What if
Yeah, if you want to do coastline, Chile, not Croatia.
What if Dracula returned today and tried to form his own empire?
Like Vlad the Impaler, or like Dracula the Vampire.
After hundreds of years in hiding, Dracula would finally emerge in Romania with his vampire army.
The vampire one. Ugh, great.
He would quickly take over the country. He would convert more humans into vampires and take over Serbia and Bulgaria as well. He would begin researching technology that would allow him to become immune to the sun.
I think vampires generally, well, obviously they're more powerful than humans, so yeah, I think they could have a pretty strong shot. But also, nuclear weapons. Oh yeah, and my favorite word to say on this series. NATO.
And thus unstoppable. However,
NATO would absolutely put hell in back for them.
However, the world wouldn't just watch and would unite to stop Dracula. They would use weapons like UV lights to destroy the vampires. Their strategy would be effective, and they would manage to push into the vampire kingdom. But Dracula would start mass-producing vampires, and the humans would begin
mass-producing? How?
Falling back. However, the humans would use satellites to redirect sunlight onto vampire...
What? I'm so good. I'm
occupied areas, severely weakening the vampires. The humans would now be able to quickly overcome them. However, Dracula would manage to find a way to survive in sunlight, but with his empire already destroyed, he would decide to flee and would manage to escape. Humanity would win, but they have not seen the last of Dracula. What if Dracula returned to...
another fake cliffhanger that they're never gonna make a part 2 for.
What if Greece and Turkey tried to bring back the Byzantine Empire?
Like them uniting and then reforming the Byzantine Empire, because that seems very unlikely, because they hate each other.
Both Greece and Turkey believe they are the rightful successors of the Byzantine.
Says who? The Turks are the descendants of the Ottoman Empire. That's incredibly obvious. And then the Greeks are obviously the descendants of the Byzantine Empire, which is also incredibly obvious. So how are they fighting over this? They both have their respective empires.
Byzantine Empire, and they would decide to try to bring it back separately. Greece would begin by conquering the Balkans, quickly taking control of the...
Why would you bring it back separately? Unite and then do it together.
The smaller countries. In the meantime...
I didn't like that he took Macedonia.
Turkey would start conquering countries in the middle.
But actually, Greece being able to take over those countries seems pretty likely overall. And Turkey being able to take over Syria. Yeah, it sounds likely.
The Greeks would then reach Serbia, and although Serbia has a large military, the Greeks would be able to overpower them. Bulgaria would be surrounded and would soon fall as well. Meanwhile, the Turks would be finished with all the smaller countries in the Middle East.
Sorry, you just glossed over Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Cyprus. Israel's a nuclear power. Hold on a sec. They just casually just finish off a nuclear power, just like that. Jeez.
And would attack Egypt next. However, the Egyptians would fortify their border, and the Turks wouldn't be able to push them. The Greeks would see this as their chance and would attack the Turks. However, the Turks would...
Why would you attack the Turks?
Invade Egypt by sea and would soon defeat them. With all of their forces now focused on Greece, the Greeks wouldn't be able to hold them back and would soon fall, and the Turks would proclaim the return of the Byzantine.
I think they'd more like to proclaim the return of the Ottoman Empire, maybe?
Byzantine Empire. What if Shadow from Sonic tried to take over the world?
Who?
After escaping the GUN facility, Shadow would decide to punish humanity for destroying the only person he loved. Japan would deploy its soldiers, tanks, and planes. However, Shadow's incredible speed would make it impossible for them to defeat him.
Is he like Sonic or something? Like an evil version of Sonic or something?
Soon, he would take over all of Japan. Since the rest of the world watched the movie, they would try to empathize with Shadow and talk him into not destroying the world, but it wouldn't work. After exhausting their options, they would decide to manipulate Shadow and would reveal to him that Maria Robotnik is still alive and that they have her hostage in a GUN facility. Shadow would go to the facility, defeat the army defending her, and find her. However, Maria Robotnik would live up to her name, as she would secretly be a robot designed to trick Shadow. Shadow would come closer to hug her. However, a bomb would activate, and vulnerable shadow would get caught in the blast and erased. In the end, humanity would win, but at what cost? What if...
I can't really argue this because I have no idea who this thing is.
What if Dusan the Great returned today? With the support of the Serbian people, Dusan would quickly return to his throne. He would mobilize the Serbian army and attack Kosovo to reclaim the ancient Serbian lands, and he would soon succeed. He would then attack
Maybe.
North Macedonia as well, quickly taking it. After
Nationalism for Macedonia.
that, Dusan would force Montenegro to join him. Then he would attack Bosnia and liberate the
Montenegro would do
Serbian
that,
people
but okay.
there. He would want to take revenge on Croatia and Slovenia for humiliating the Serbian people. They would try to resist, but he would ruthlessly destroy everything in his path and defeat them as well. He would then
Dang, are we going back to ethnic cleansing?
attack
Wait a second, he just remade Yugoslavia. But also, wait a second, if it was just that easy to just retake Yugoslavia, why didn't they win in the first place? So, I'm calling crap. Oh, wait, hold on. It is crap. Because Slovenia and Croatia and Montenegro and Macedonia and Albania all are part of this thing called NATO. So,
attack Albania to punish them for destroying the Serbian monasteries, and they would soon fall. Dusan would then attack Greece to reclaim the lands of the Serbian
If NATO hasn't attacked already, they would attack at this point.
Empire, but Bulgaria would join the war to stop Serbia. However,
NATO.
Dusan would outsmart their armies, and after separating them, he would slowly destroy both of them and would proclaim the return of the mighty
Do these mapping people just completely forget, ah yes, NATO exists?
Serbian Empire. And then, Turkey would take over everything again. What?
I hate this.
What if Pakistan tried to form Greater Pakistan? First,
Why?
Pakistan would mobilize its military and attack Afghanistan. Since Afghanistan has a small military, it would quickly fall. Next, they would want to
No. No. First off, America spent... Well, actually, the reason they did spend 20 years there is because they just kept fleeing to Pakistan, so if they have nowhere to flee to, then... I mean, they've had some crap this year, so I mean, maybe they'd fight. But it's a pretty even fight, I'd say. Actually, no, wait. Pakistan has nukes. Never mind. Afghanistan would fall.
unite the Balok people. With Chinese aid arriving, they would attack Iran. The Pakistani army would quickly capture key territories and convince Iran to give up Balochistan. They would want to attack India next. However, they would first aim to quickly...
Where have I heard this? Oh yeah, the news recently. Doesn't Pakistan and India just want to fight over Kashmir right now? Like, there's been a ton of news around it.
Capture Bangladesh. With the help of the Chinese Navy, they would invade swiftly.
Sure, I guess.
However, they wouldn't manage to defeat Bangladesh quickly enough, and India would join the war. China would also enter the conflict and would quickly destroy Bangladesh.
Jeez.
The Pakistani hackers would disable India's nuclear capabilities, putting more pressure on India. The combined Pakistani and Chinese armies would be too strong for the Indians, and they would soon capture New Delhi.
I'd also like to say that Pakistan is just kind of always on like this edge of like collapsing, not collapsing, collapsing, not collapsing. I think the Chinese have a strong enough military to where they could fight India and probably win. Pakistan could not defeat India. They're both new.
Leaving India with no choice but to surrender. With the Indian territories conquered, Pakistan would form
Why wouldn't they want Kashmir?
the Greater Pakistani
Or
Empire.
did they take Kashmir?
What if Pakistan tried to form
Okay. Next one.
What if Abraham Lincoln returned today? If Lincoln returned today, he would once again enroll to become president and would soon be elected. He would see the corruption and wealth inequality in America and would push for major changes.
We'd have to wait for 2028. after the chaos that is the Orange Man.
He would try to instate free healthcare and education, along with higher
I like
minimum
that.
wages. He would conduct major campaigns against corruption and would impose a massive tax on the extremely rich. However, the billionaires and corrupt politicians wouldn't like this and would start a civil war in order to take back the power.
Wait, where's New York part of this? Leave us out of it.
They had over the country. Since Lincoln wouldn't know anything about modern warfare, the billionaires would have the advantage. They would
I think he'd know a little something about it. Like, sure, he's working with modern weapons, but also he could still learn. Learn. Jeez. My tongue has decided to betray me today.
would try to assassinate Lincoln with a drone, but Lincoln would remember his past mistakes and would manage to escape. Lincoln would call all true Americans to unite in the name of democracy, and the people would side with him. Soon, the billionaires would be left without an army and would lose the war, allowing Lincoln to return America to its true path. What if Abraham Lincoln...
Not bad.
What if Norway tried to unite all Nordic countries?
I think it'd be a bit better if he did it with Denmark, but okay. Norway just seems kind of a random option. Like, why Norway?
Norway has a small military, so they wouldn't be able to defeat Sweden yet.
Yeah, but they got a lot of money and a lot of ways they can spend
They
it.
would first attack Denmark. However, they would offer Germany its former territory in exchange for help. After defeating Denmark, Germany would provide
Interesting proposition, but Germany would not take that.
aid, boosting Norway's military. Next, they would attack Iceland. Since Iceland doesn't have a military, it would quickly fall.
But also, I think NATO would probably step in at this point, like, just like, whoa, you can't just go attacking all your neighbors.
Norway would then launch an attack on Sweden. Through a swift offensive, they would separate the Swedish forces and manage to defeat Sweden after some time.
I don't think Norway could defeat Sweden in any timeline, so this just seems kind of unrealistic.
Norway would then attack Finland. However, the Finnish military would be well prepared for this.
The Finnish are ready to defend their country and have a strong military to boot, so don't mess with Finland.
Invasion and would be significantly stronger than the Norwegians. Finnish soldiers would
I can
begin
agree with
pushing
that.
into Norway, and the situation would not look
Yes.
good. In desperation, Norway would seek help from Russia in exchange.
The White Death. I don't think Russia's gonna want to go back there.
For territories, and the Russians would accept. Facing a two-front war, the Finnish would soon be finished, and Norway would establish the Nordic Empire. What if Norway tried to unite?
What universe would Norway side with Russia? And what? And the Russians could not defeat Finland. They can't defeat Ukraine, so what's Finland? How's Finland going to be any different?
What if Mao Zedong returned today? The CCP would welcome Mao back to the...
I don't know about welcome. Because, I mean, considering the, many people he managed to, unalive.
country, and we would quickly place him as our leader. Mao would mobilize the Red Army and prepare China for war. He would quickly take over Taiwan, angering the
Yeah, but here's the thing, okay? He definitely had some territorial expansions under his rule, but he didn't do it by just, like, sending in a military all willy-nilly. Like, sure, he did a lot of military campaigns, like in Tibet and Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and, what was the other place? Manchuria? Like, yeah, he did a lot of stuff like that. But also, like, he did a lot of very calculated things, so I don't think he'd just start marching into Taiwan. Like, he definitely waits a bit before he tried anything.
capitalists of the West, who would then declare war. However, our
Would they? Yeah, I'd
glorious
say so.
leader wouldn't wait around and would strike Japan. The Japanese forces wouldn't be ready, and they would quickly fall. South Korea
I think America would step in before they even landed on the shores, but okay,
They would now be completely surrounded, and Mao would liberate the people there. Chairman Mao would then focus on securing the South China Sea, launching attacks on Vietnam, the Philippines, and
China lost to the Vietnamese. God, how many times was it? Too many. And you think they're gonna win this time?
Malaysia. The Red Army would be
That is way too many places to attack at once. Like, just all at once. Just send everything you got just to those 3 places.
begin to destroy these countries, but the US would slow them down, with Mao distracted.
That's way too much area to fight in.
The US would
That'd
try
be a
to liberate
strategic
Japan.
nightmare.
However, Mao anticipated this and would destroy the US soldiers stationed there.
I don't think the Chinese could beat the Americans in any type of war, ever.
With the South China Sea secured, Chairman Mao would decide to destroy the capitalist oppressors in America and would send a surprise naval invasion to the US. Their
You know
entire
how much of a strategic nightmare that would be to send, like, an entire fleet over to America?
US army would come to stop us, and the final battle would begin. What if
Okay, here's the thing. The main goals of Mao was to kind of just reestablish the borders of the Qin dynasty. So, like, I think instead of going after Malaysia and the Philippines, I think they'd go after Mongolia instead.
What if Mao Zedong returned today?
And also
The
that area in
CCP would
Russia.
welcome
What if Finland tried to form Greater Finland? The good news is that all of the territories Finland needs are located within a single country. The bad news is that that country is Russia,
We act like Russia has a good military.
and it would be impossible for Finland to defeat it alone. Thanks to the war in Ukraine, Finland would try to convince NATO to attack Russia while it is weakened. However, NATO would refuse, as such an action could lead to a nuclear conflict. Finland would decide to take these territories without a direct conflict. To achieve this, Finland would fund separatist movements in Russia and do everything they
Ooh, I like this approach.
can to accelerate the country's collapse. Once the Russian people have had enough of Putin's dictatorship, a civil war would break out as a new democratic Russia emerges. During the chaos, many regions would declare independence, including Karelia, which Finland would quickly annex.
Ooh.
Finland would then offer the new Russian government aid in exchange for territories, and they would accept. With the entire West funding the new Russian government in order to defeat Putin, the old Russian state would soon fall, allowing Finland to establish the Greater Finnish Empire. What if
I don't think it would happen that fast, but that was actually pretty good.
What if Argentina tried to take over all of South America? Argentina would
Yeah, good luck.
mobilize its military. However, they would still be relatively weak. They would decide to get Lionel Messi to call the Argentinians to war and would manage to significantly
Actually, like an ad campaign of just like having Messi just be like, "We want you. Sign up to the Argentinian military now," would be like, I'd sign up just because of how funny that is. Somebody should make that. Somebody make that, please.
boost their military. They would then attack Uruguay, quickly defeating them.
Agree with that.
Paraguay would be next, and they would soon
Yes, get rid of Paraguay. I think every South American country would agree with Argentina to just murder Paraguay.
fall as well.
No one would
Afterward, they would give these territories to Brazil in
Don't you want to, I don't know, take over the continent?
exchange for an alliance. Argentina would attack Chile
Give up, like, Uruguay, but, like... What?
next, intentionally falling back to lure the Chilean forces into their territory. Once the
That seems like a lot of territory lost.
Chileans push far enough, Argentina would launch a surprise counterattack.
Why not just launch the counterattack just right in the middle? Just push all your forces right in the middle and split Chile.
Capturing their capital and winning the war. Together
That seemed kind of unnecessary. but
with
okay.
Brazil, they would conquer the rest of South America. They would convince Brazil to take
We just kind of gloss over everyone else. Colombia, Guyana, Suriname, Venezuela, Peru, Ecuador. Yes, they'd all just fold. Like,
take French Guiana, making France declare war on them. At that moment, Argentina would betray Brazil and attack them. Surrounded on all sides, Brazil would soon fall, allowing Argentina to form its own South American empire.
But he didn't take over all of it.
What if Argentina...
Okay. This one was confusing.
What if Australia tried to take over all of Oceania?
I don't know why you would want to do that, but okay.
The Australians would get tired of being a puppet under U.S. influence
They're not a U.S. puppet, trust me.
and decide to establish themselves as the dominant force in Oceania. First,
They literally are the dominant force in Oceania.
Australia would offer to buy the U.S. and French islands in Oceania, and they would accept. Australia
As long as it's not Hawaii, America might accept.
would then mobilize its military and attack New Zealand. New Zealand wouldn't expect this and would quickly fall. Then they would attack Papua New Guinea. The jungle would slow down the Australians, but they would win after some time.
Okay, I can agree with this. Like, both of those countries are weaker than Australia, so yeah.
Then they would demand that all remaining island nations in Oceania join them immediately. Many would accept, and those that refuse would be destroyed. Now Australia would have...
I think most of them would refuse, and most countries would agree with those islands forming some sort of alliance against Australia. Kind of like... I don't know. It just doesn't seem likely.
would have to take the rest of
But yes, I would agree they would be destroyed.
Papua New Guinea, which is part of Indonesia. Yeah, we're not doing that. With the
Well, at least they were somewhat...
territories they conquered, they would form the Oceanic Empire. What if Canada tried to take over the U.S.?
How many weapons do I need to list to beat Canada?
After Trump's claims on Canada, the Canadians would become furious and
Yeah. I mean, we have nuclear weapons, the F-22, strong missiles. I mean, we just put junk together and just call it a new thing and then win war. But the Canadians have war crimes. War crimes don't beat a nuke. Don't be stupid.
and decide to take over the U.S. instead. However, they wouldn't be able to do it alone. They would take advantage of Trump's claims on Greenland to convince the European nations that the U.S. is...
They would turn NATO against America? I mean, you know what? In a universe where, like, Trump really, like, tried to take over Canada, like, really, really tried, I could see them turning against America, like, all of NATO. But just because Canada doesn't like what Trump says, like, yeah, I get it, it's stupid and it's kind of a, you know, claim on your territory, but also, like, I don't think you could turn all of their allies against them.
is now a threat to world peace. They would also convince Mexico to join them. With NATO's army
I agree,
mobilized,
Mexico would immediately join them.
they would declare war on the U.S. Alaska would be isolated, allowing Canada to quickly take control. NATO would push
I think
into the
Russia
northeast.
would also, no, Russia kind of likes America, just because of Trump.
Securing major cities. Meanwhile, Mexico would swiftly seize the oil fields in Texas. NATO would attempt to negotiate a change in U.S. leadership, and the U.S. would be willing to accept. However, Canada would reject the offer and instead demand full annexation of the U.S. This would enrage the American public, causing
That would
the
also enrage Mexico, because they want land too.
already massive U.S. military to expand even further, and NATO forces would begin falling back. Major Canadian cities
Yeah,
would
agreed. Like, no amount of military, well, a certain amount, but no Canadian military could ever beat America, or even NATO.
fall, forcing Canada to surrender. Mexico would soon be conquered as well. With no viable way to launch a successful naval invasion, NATO would have no choice but to withdraw, leaving the U.S. victorious.
Looks like Trump got
What if
what he
Canada
wanted,
tried...
except for Greenland.
What if Attack on Titan's rumbling happened today?
Ooh, yes.
The colossal Titans would begin their march to destroy humanity in Eldia. They would swim across the Mozambique Channel and start destroying Africa. The countries there would call for help, but many would still consider the entire thing to be a joke.
See, there's something called intercommunication, like to where we can just, I don't know, record things and post it on the internet. So
Conventional firearms would be useless against the Titans.
no crap. Like, wow. A small little gun is gonna murder a giant, 60 to 70 foot Titan?
Within just a few days, they would take over half of Africa. The
Thank God I know this one.
world leaders would finally realize the seriousness of the situation and would unite to stop the Titans.
Wow,
Airplanes and
finally
naval forces
understand
would
it.
launch missiles at the Titans, but they would be hesitant to use nukes.
I think missiles would do the job because a Thunder Spear was able to take out a few of those Titans. So just get like a bunch of missiles together, like as many as you can possibly get, line them up along the line, and just launch them. Done.
Fearing the Titans had already spread too far and they couldn't risk a nuclear winter. Despite global efforts, the Titans would cross the Mediterranean Sea and make their way into Europe. Soon, the first Titans would reach
And they broke
America
Macedonia. I am angry.
as well. Humanity wouldn't give up and would keep attacking the Titans, with some countries even using nukes despite
Missiles would work.
the warnings. The number of Titans would slowly decrease. In the final battle, humanity would use every remaining missile they had, barely managing to stop the Titans. The rumbling would end, but the world would be left in ruins. What if
I can generally agree with it. I think if you just get enough missiles, you could absolutely destroy them, yes.
What if Italy tried to bring back the Roman Empire?
For what purpose?
Italy is closer to making this happen than you might think. All it would need to do is take control of the European Union. The first step would be
Ah, yes. Italy has to take control of the European Union. It's that easy. It's just that easy. Like, anyone can do that. My grandma did it.
promoting the idea of transforming the EU into a single country. Over time, Italy would succeed in establishing a highly autonomous
Okay, that actually sounds likely. Like, kind of just over time, just kind of gradually becoming its own country.
European Union state, and would manage to convince member nations to put the capital in Rome, as it is
No amount of convincing would put it in Rome. They would probably most likely put it in Schengen.
a center of
Potentially,
European
or
culture and
Brussels.
history. They would continue wearing the EU mask and would accelerate the accession process, quickly absorbing Balkan countries that had already
See, but Italy doesn't have full control anymore. It's all the European nations, so, well, most of them anyways. So Italy doesn't actually have control over this. Unless they become a really prominent member in the EU, like France and Germany.
already applied. Next, they would
Wait a
extend
second.
invitations to nations across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. While some would willingly join, many more would refuse.
The UK, Norway, and Iceland would not join, okay? Brexit happened. Norway just doesn't like the fishing practices, and same with Iceland.
In response, the EU would issue ultimatums demanding immediate integration. Some nations would comply, but for those that
Algeria would not comply with this.
resisted, war would become inevitable. With its overwhelming military strength, the EU would swiftly conquer all of them, and a new and more powerful Roman Empire would rise.
I don't think this could or would ever. Oh, thank God they didn't.
From the ashes. What
Okay, next one.
if Lysenborg tried to take over Europe? Lysenborg would first mobilize
What's Lysenborg?
its army and send ultimatums to both Spain
Wait, but why does the peninsula look like that? What is this? I'm just gonna assume it's some fantasy country.
and Portugal, demanding that they join Lysenborg immediately. They would have no choice but to accept. However, NATO would respond by
Thank you, finally. It only took us God knows how many videos to get down here, but yes, NATO would fight.
attacking Lysenborg, accusing it of violating the Treaty of Nuremberg from 1661. This would prove to be a mistake,
Yes.
as Lysenborg possesses the most powerful army in the world. Lysenborg would advance into Europe.
Wait, go back a second. Go back a second.
This would prove to be a mistake, as Lysenborg possesses the most powerful army in the world.
In What universe? What? Is this just like some fake country that he just made up and just like gave it the most powerful military in the world, so it's just like plot armor?
Lisenborg would advance into Europe and successfully conquer most of it within a few weeks. Russia would join the conflict and attack NATO in hopes of taking a few territories for themselves. However, Lisenborg would attack Russia as well, and soon all of Europe would fall under their control. Lisenborg would then invade Canada to destroy the rest of NATO. The United States would be left alone and wouldn't stand a chance against the Lisenborgians. The US would attempt to surrender, but King Listen, the 48th, would reject their surrender, declaring that America will never forget the name of Lisenborg again.
This sounds like an April Fool's thing. Let me see, is this made on April Fool's? No. Feb 6 somehow. Okay, next one.
What if Trotsky returned today? Trotsky would rally.
Why? But why is everything failing right now?
Rally the Russian people, and with their help, they would destroy the authoritarian Russian government, allowing communism to return to Russia. What if Lisenborg tried to take over Europe? What if...
What has happened? Technical difficulties. Please stand by. Hooray, we fixed it. I'm technologically an idiot.
What if Trotsky returned today? Trotsky would rally the Russian people, and with their help, they would destroy the authoritarian Russian government, allowing communism to return to Russia once again. Trotsky believed in the
I don't know if the Russian people would be so keen on communism again. But I mean, okay, sure.
permanent revolution, meaning he believed communism had to spread to the entire world for it to work. Thanks to the internet and social media, he would spread his ideology across the globe. Many people experiencing poverty and inequality in their capitalist countries would begin protesting, and many civil wars would erupt
across... Are you
across
just referring to, like, literally any African country?
the globe. Many of the countries that were once part of the USSR would decide to join him. The spread of communism across Europe would lead many
Belarus... Actually, I don't think any country would rejoin Russia. Latvia would... Latvia would rejoin this... No, it wouldn't. Nope. No.
many countries to leave NATO and join Russia's alliance. With their combined forces,
Even funnier than Latvia, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Serbia, what is that, Bosnia, Croatia, Slovenia. Now, the Balkan countries sure makes a bit of sense. Greece makes no sense. Italy makes absolutely zero sense. And Spain and Portugal make, like, less sense than anything else.
they would slowly spread communism to the rest of Europe. However, the US would intervene and
spreading it to Poland. They ain't going back.
try to stop the spread of communism. They would manage to silence the protests in many countries.
Why would anyone protest for communism?
In the end, the spread of communism would be halted and a new Cold War would begin. What if Trotsky...
And how come America wasn't mentioned in this, like, at all?
What if NATO tried to take over Europe?
Ooh. He's used my own rules against me. This is gonna be fun.
NATO would mobilize its large army and demand that all European countries that aren't in NATO join them immediately. Although some would accept, countries like
I think Ukraine would accept, Switzerland would not accept, and most of the Balkan countries would probably accept.
Serbia, Bosnia, and Austria would decline, forcing NATO to attack them. Ukraine would also join NATO, prompting Russia to join the conflict. Since NATO is no longer a defensive alliance, but instead an aggressive one, many countries would decide to leave the alliance, such as Turkey, Hungary, Slovakia, and France. With this, a new world war would erupt in Europe. NATO would quickly conquer the smaller countries in Central Europe, while Russia would push into
an offensive alliance? I mean, I don't think European countries would leave that. Like, maybe Canada would, but not like any European countries would leave that.
Ukraine, the Baltics, and Finland. Turkey would also push into the Balkans. NATO would try to quickly take over France and would make significant progress. However, due to massive protests, Spain and Italy would leave the alliance, and it would all culminate with the US leaving the alliance as well. Soon, many other countries would leave the alliance,
Yeah, how
and
come
NATO
Canada hasn't left? They're not offensive, like, whatsoever.
would collapse. While this would mark the end of the war, it would set the stage for countless future conflicts across Europe. What if I got mad and took every country I want?
Good luck.
I would begin my conquest by taking over Poland.
Okay. How long do we have left on this? Okay.
I'd mobilize the army there and quickly attack Czechia and Slovakia, capturing them in no time. Then,
Those
I'd turn my
places?
attention to the
Other
Baltics,
places?
destroying them as well. After that, I would swiftly take Belarus. I would want to take Ukraine next, but that's when 60-Second Club would decide to challenge me and try to destroy my channel before it becomes too powerful. His army would be much stronger and better equipped, but 60-Second Club wouldn't be very good at actual military strategy. He wouldn't
You ain't much better.
position his army properly, which would allow me to destroy and capture many of his soldiers. Desperate, 60-Second Club would attempt a bold naval invasion to regain the upper hand, but he would post his plans on his YouTube channel. This mistake would give me the chance
Sorry, what are you posting right now?
to anticipate his attack, allowing me to annihilate his forces. His empire would begin crumbling, and many of his soldiers would join my side, and soon I would take over his channel and claim victory. What if I got mad?
Jeez. Oof. Well, that's about all I have in me. Okay, that was terrible, and I need to go look some things up now about whatever that black hedgehog was, and the anime character, whatever. I don't know. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye.